right, hello everybody. How you doing this evening? Everybody good? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the shout at the back. Thanks for coming out. My name's Tom Snyder. For those who I've not met before, I see a lot of familiar faces and some new folks as well. How many folks are at their very first RIoT this evening? Well, welcome. Thanks for coming out. Good group. We've been doing this for a while. Our organization, as a nonprofit, we're a technology-based economic development organization. And yes, I hit record on that. All right, sorry, we got all kinds of tech and AV stuff going on here.
I thought it was just vibing out.
Yeah. And can you all hear me okay? Okay, good. There we go. Now,
Hey.
yeah. Now you have to listen to me. Sorry about that. Yeah, so we're a technology-based economic development organization. We're actually next month going to hit 15 years of work in the area. We're going to have a celebration at our laboratory office. We run a wireless laboratory called the Wireless Research Center up in Wake Forest. If anybody wants some information about that, we'd love to have you come up to that event. The RIoT part of the business that I lead is really focused on emerging technologies and how emerging tech continually shapes our economy, right? If you think back to these terms of industrial revolutions, we started RIoT kind of when IoT was the buzziest of buzzwords, right? They were calling it the fourth industrial revolution. These technology shifts sometimes change everything, change the game, like electricity was the second industrial revolution, right? Will we ever go back and do things without electricity that we can now do with electricity, right? You don't do that. It changes everything. The internet was the third, and this data economy, as we call it, this automation of data is really where we are, where the whole game is changing, and that's a combination of the data generation at the source, which is the IoT kind of thing side of stuff, but then what do you do with that in real time? That's where AI and the things that we're going to talk about this evening really come into play. Before we jump in, I do want to just plug a couple of things. One is that our efforts, we have over the years been able to keep all of our events completely free and open to the public. We want to be as inclusive as we can for anyone to participate in this technology economy. And in large part, that's due to great corporate sponsors, municipal government partners, state government, federal government. We have a lot of kind of public sector contracts, and then we get a lot of private sector support from sponsors like our friends at T-Mobile back here. Please speak to them, thank them for being here. There may be a couple of other sponsors here in the crowd as well. Seek them out, figure out who they are, and we will have a quiz at the end if we need to, right? But anyway, so thanks for the support from everybody to keep these things free and open so that everybody can participate. We do a lot of educational programming, particularly around entrepreneurship and the intersection of technology and new young businesses. Almost all net new jobs are created by young organizations. Large companies might create jobs in one place as they're downsizing jobs in another place, but really new jobs are created all around us by small businesses. And we run startup accelerator programs. We have a program kicking off in about 3 weeks in Pittsburgh, North Carolina. We just wrapped up a program in Wilson, North Carolina. We've got another program coming up later this year up in Virginia. If anyone knows any Virginia-based entrepreneurs, we would love to have them pointed our way. We're actively recruiting to some programs now, really focused on people who are just thinking about even getting started. They haven't even done anything yet. So we'll work from that earliest stage all the way to mature and growing companies and establish organizations. We do a lot of corporate innovation support work for companies that are trying to figure out, even in my established organization, I need to change because the world is changing, because technology is changing. And, if you're looking for that kind of help and support, we're here to do so. This evening, what we're doing, this is our second time that we're going to do a live audience podcast recording. For a number of years now, we've been running what's called the RIoT Underground. You can find that podcast on Apple Music, on Spotify, Google Music, like all the platforms. We're in our 6th season of the podcast, but this is the first season where we decided it'd be fun to invite an audience in to join us. So Ryan, thank you for being a little bit of a guinea pig here. Hey, it's going to be fun, but Excited to have Ryan Abel here. He's the managing director of the Raleigh office of Atomic Object. When I first learned about Atomic Object, I didn't know if it was like a top secret government program or, maybe you created some kind of a sentient toaster or so. I don't know. Glad to have you here. And maybe just to open things up, I'll ask you to just share a little bit about yourself. And then one of the things that we ask every one of our guests, because most people are just listening to this podcast later on, is to have a little bit of an idea in their mind of who they're hearing from. One day, there's going to be a huge, is it biopic or biopic? I hear both.
Biopic?
Biopic? Biopic. Okay. Anyway, biopic about the atomic object journey, and you're part of it. If you were able to cast yourself, who would play Ryan?
So this is the only question that I got ahead of time. And so I had some time to think about it. It's gonna be my best answer tonight. Everything else is off the cuff, and I apologize in advance. I went, I don't know if everybody will know this person, but I'm a pretty relaxed individual. I don't take anything super seriously. But I also enjoy creativity and kind of like off the cuff humor and stuff like that. So for that reason, somebody I've always looked up to that I think is really funny is Andy Samberg.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a really fun person to play me. And I think I would enjoy watching that movie just to watch him.
Yeah, yeah. I can see him closing clients to software deals.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. So give our audience both online and here in person some idea of just about what the company does.
Yeah. So Atomic Object, we are a custom software design and development company. We were founded in 2001, so we've been around for 25 years coming up next year. I think part of the reason maybe we're having this conversation in particular about AI and culture is we're really emphasizing culture at Atomic. So in the tech community, you hear a lot about organizations going public, scaling quickly, 7-8 figure exits. How do you get there that fast? And we have always been privately held and employee owned. We've always taken a sustainable growth mindset in building the organization. I think when our founder founded in 2001, his vision is that we would never be more than 10 people across the organization. But as you do good work, more work comes your way. So we've grown organically over the years. We've planted offices in other cities, but our goal is really to be the best local provider for software design and development services. So down the street, somebody you can meet in person.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's obviously, a big industry. It's changing really fast. We're going to dig into some of that here this evening, but to just get a little bit of a baseline, let's start with, obviously, there's more hype around AI than anything else right now. Like, where do you believe we are? Like, what's the maturity or the technology readiness level, however you want to describe it? Like, where is AI today? Is it still infancy? Is it mature?
Infancy, I would say.
Yeah.
I think that if you look at media, there's a lot of hype around the things that AI is doing. You see a lot of these large technology corporations laying off tons of people under the guise of AI. I wonder if some of that is actually like economic uncertainty, and this is a great veil for that kind of stuff. But I think the tools that are out there that are helping people right now are pretty operational. Things that are helping you be more efficient in capturing stuff from meetings and storing data places, or transforming data from one form to another. Personally, like the tools I've used, especially in development, I think help us be more efficient. So things that we use at Atomic, like Cursor, helping us write code faster. But it's not thinking up new systems by itself or understanding context of a complex system so that when it builds something for you, it's right the first time. Or things like Figma that allow us to do, rapid design, iteration, and prototyping. But they aren't really replacing any of the work we do. It's just creating some efficiencies for us right now.
Do you believe that it will always be more of an efficiency hack, or do you think it's going to truly become value creation?
It's a good question. I mean, it's moved so quickly. Like, we should like timestamp exactly what I said this, because next week it'll be different. Yeah. But I just feel like you look at other things that have thought to be big disruptions, especially like I'm in the tech world, so I'll talk a lot about tech, but like, moving from on-prem to cloud and how that's going to change everything, and all these people that are doing infrastructure and IT are going to lose jobs, and like, if anything, that creates more jobs. And there's going to be a future where AI is able to do things that are more sophisticated, and potentially replacing the value creation of some people. But I also see this world where those tools for a long period of time are still going to need some sort of human supervision. So what I see is like elevating some of the roles that we currently have to manage things that probably were like not the most fulfilling parts of your job anyways. And now you're, the person that's making sure that things are, T's are crossed and I's are dotted. But kind of like elevating where everybody's working and automating some of those more tedious things.
So one of the more interesting kind of viewpoints that I had heard, and I've kind of been leaning into, is as folks are thinking about like where are the best places to deploy AI in your organization, it's around like, well, what is it the thing, pull your employees, what are the things they just least like to do?
Yeah, exactly.
It turns out they tend to be things that can be more automated,
Yeah.
right? So you believe it's, we're still early days. I agree, but what was the point? Can you remember back to a point where you suddenly said, like, this is real? This isn't a science fiction term or a university research term. This is an actual enterprise tool.
I think that there were a couple of signals, like not personal experiences I had, but seeing, ChatGPT and OpenAI go through its transformation and how quickly, organizations like that or Anthropic have gained market share. Like clearly people think that there is a future here and the investment is there. I think for me, I, started like probably most other people getting into ChatGPT and asking some questions, and like mostly started using it for fun stuff and seeing if you could trick it, and all these prompt injection attack things that you can do to make it do crazy things. But then I started using it more for research, and that's where I found that tools for the job that I do have been really interesting to understand. As an organization, we work across a lot of different industries, and using a tool like deep research that allows me to at least get like a surface level view of the problems that these industries are typically facing, so that I can go into conversations with people and be empathetic and understand what they're going through. I think like for that, it's been super valuable to me. Um, Side story: this past week, I actually vibe coded my first app. So my background is in software development. I'm a software developer by trade, and the challenge I had was like I'm doing this trip with some friends coming up, and I wanted to build this app that's like a twin for it, and I didn't want to look at the code at all. And so I put this prompt in, and it worked for 10 minutes or so. And that was like my first aha moment for non-technical people, because at the end of it, Cursor gave me like, okay, now run this npm command to start the web server. And you hit enter, and like a browser comes up, and like this app that has a UI, it has nav bar, it has kind of a dashboard feel, shows up, and you feel like you've done something magic. And like that was the thing where okay, as a technical person, if I was putting myself in a non-technical seat, I can totally understand why this is the hype around this.
Yeah, so I'll share a similar story. The last I did any kind of formal coding was back in my university days, and I was writing Fortran, and I was writing like MATLAB scripts. Long time ago, yeah. Right? I'd mastered BASIC. I was actually one of these nerdy elementary school kids that took a class in BASIC at community college, but I really had never done any coding. And now, not even with a sophisticated tool like Cursor, but just with ChatGPT and language models, aren't really coding models. I've successfully written Python code. I love doing jigsaw puzzles, so I made a little tool that I can upload a picture and it'll cut it into a puzzle, and I can drag and drop and put things together. And it's really cool to be able to do that.
It is really cool.
Amazing. So
just don't look at the code that it created and think about how you're going to extend it.
I'm sure it's terrible. And it, I will say, it took me far longer than I thought. Yep. And there were many times where I left the session thinking everything had been saved, and I'd pick it up later, and I come back and like a whole lot of it had to be done again. And so it's early days.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you run into walls really. That was my experience too. Like you run into walls so quickly, especially somebody that has that experience building this stuff. You can see like, oh man, it's just like riddled with issues. And I tried to prompt it to fix things, and it broke other things. But yeah.
How much time are you spending as you're working with clients, and they have expectations, of course, right? How much time do you find you need to spend educating them about the way that you're working versus just like keeping them focused on like, well, here's what we're trying to achieve for you.
Yeah, I think that the way that we've been leveraging AI internally has largely been to be able to deliver stuff faster for clients. So, um, the conversation and education around them is like, what are the tools that we're using in order to enable faster delivery of things? I think early on, we talked to a lot of organizations that were like, hey, ChatGPT just released this thing. Like, we want to train our own model. And it's like a lot of those conversations were all like, oh, look how much money like has been invested in this in order to get to the point it's at. And like, do you have $100 million that you're willing to invest in your idea? But a lot of that education was around tooling that started to exist on the periphery of those tools. So like retrieval augmented generation, for example, and like, hey, as an entrepreneur, you can go into these tools and start to do these things that make it feel a little bit more custom to your thing. That you can start to validate how useful is this for me as a business versus how much of it is just a hype cycle.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'll ask kind of a techie question.
Yep.
Because you brought up RAG.
Yep.
My view is that RAG and Model Context Protocol (MCP) are the most important areas of development right now. I was going to say agree or disagree.
Yeah, I think so.
So why?
So I think retrieval augmented generation, putting that layer on top of the general knowledge base of an LLM, I think is the thing. The secret that like gives an organization a little bit of a moat if they're using it for business value, because then it starts to learn, custom context about what is different about your organization or your product. And I think MCP, the thing I love about that is I grew up in software development where a lot of it is back end, front end. You're developing APIs to service front end clients, send data back and forth. And in my world, whenever you had to add new data to the system, you would have to, in the back end, add new API stuff. In the front end, you have to consume that data. And the really nice thing about MCP is it abstracts a lot of that from you and just knows how to retrieve the data you want as long as you publish the things in the way that MCP can understand and consume. So like, I think that that's a game changer in terms of how do you actually architect systems if you're using MCP. That saves probably a lot of work in just like that back end, front end contract.
I have a couple of questions. I'd like to talk for a few minutes about just speculating on the landscape of where things are going in this combination of AI and in data. And then I do want to pivot into our primary topic, which is really around culture and so on. But I've been doing a lot of reading and kind of research lately around data access. And so not real long ago, the rage was all about creating the right APIs so that folks could access the data and do system integration and do interesting things across enterprise tools and platforms and so on. And now, fast forward to today, just a couple of weeks ago, Slack makes a decision, says even your own conversations as a Slack client, you're not allowed to share with other pieces of software because they want to capture that data and monetize it themselves, right? Are we going to see a pendulum swing the whole other way around where APIs are going to be closed, silos are going to go up, walled gardens, etc.?
I mean, I think you saw it earlier on with some of the news sources too, when their stuff was being consumed into LLMs and they kind of took a stance. I think you see other things in that pendulum shift. Cloudflare, I think, just announced like a pay-per-crawl model where if LLMs want to crawl sites through, this provider, they're going to start paying for it. Yeah. So I think everybody's on that page of like, how do we monetize it? How do we protect our data? Which I think has, tons of trade-offs, right? In the one hand, if you allow that data to flow more freely, think about all the interesting things you could do when you have all this disparate data that historically it's been very tough engineering problem to bring those things together in a way that you can glean insights from. But there are a lot of data privacy concerns with that too, and who's using that data for what. You look at Planeteer stuff and some of the things they're doing, and who knows.
Should the technology platforms be handled a little bit the way the internet was, where it became, TCP/IP and HTML and all these tools where they were open standards for anyone to use, and net neutrality guaranteed anyone can use it, whether you're a 90-pound gorilla or a one-person startup, right? All of this AI stuff is proprietary corporate platforms.
Yep.
Do we need to open that up to really unlock the potential in the economy, or I don't know how we would do that,
Yeah.
but should we?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, speaking of 900-pound gorillas, it's like we formed a new one overnight with OpenAI. So it's like, if you saw that as a hope of like a new thing that could, you know,
Yeah.
do this promise, like that's maybe already that ship has already sailed. So like I think what you're thinking about is what alternatives are there to that now? Is it open sourcing more models so that people can put it in the hands of people that can do interesting things with it and it's less pay? I don't know. I'd be curious to get your thoughts on it too.
Yeah, happy to share some. Probably that will require some drinks, a little more time. I'll get pretty philosophical, but I will say at the highest level, I have concerns that this isn't just VHS or beta or Blu-ray or HD DVD. This is you're going to fundamentally say I'm going to be a Google shop or a Microsoft shop or an Amazon shop, and maybe you truly get locked in, kind of in the way that Apple has always been really successful at locking people into their ecosystems. And once you have one Apple product, you kind of have to have all the Apple products. And I think interoperability is a piece of freedom that we should have.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's not the path I think that we're on right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I don't think we're doing ourselves any favor with legislation that we're passing that makes it harder to put regulations on things at the state level. But I totally agree.
Yeah. I don't think most legislators have any idea about what actually is happening, unfortunately. But that's a conversation for another day. Obviously, with any significant change, a natural kind of human response to change is some apprehension, some nervous system fear. And there's a lot of people worried about jobs, et cetera. You described at the opening how important it is as Atomic Object to set the right culture through the employee ownership and other kind of things. Like, how are you approaching this technology shift in terms of just like keeping the team motivated, keeping folks excited?
Yeah, I think we're fortunate that it's been ingrained in the culture for a long time. One of our core values is teach and learn, and I think that that's a thing that's ever present today with these new tools coming out. We've gone through several shifts before in our industry, even since my time there. Like we talk about going to cloud, and that was a big thing, and it's a huge shift in learning curve. And you have to have people that are, sincerely curious about learning new things and staying up to date in order for those things to be successfully adopted by the organization. And then I think you also need the support of the organization to like have the time to invest in learning these things, learning the things, and also like getting comfortable with them. So I feel like those kinds of things have really helped us in the past, and we've been through change before, and this is another example of that. The thing I'll add to it, I think, as opposed to a lot of the other changes I've talked about, is like this is so different of a way of working than we have in the past that historically, as software developers, we've been able to rely on mentorship pretty heavily in getting people up to speed and how to write really great software for clients and how to deliver products. I think that like introducing AI into our workflows, a lot of more experienced developers are on the same page as people that are just coming out of school and trying to understand these tools. So I think there's like actually a really interesting inflection point we're at where people that are entering the workforce. I know it's a really tough market right now, but in some ways have like a huge advantage compared to the past because they can learn these tools and set their initial process this way, where a lot of other people are spending the time to try and figure out what is my new process.
So for any students listening, use these tools to hack and ace your classes, even as your professors are probably saying you're
hold on.
Right? That gets you like, oh,
yeah. I mean, especially there's still going to be a lot of value in understanding what these tools are producing. And that's the slippery slope, right? Like, how do you balance, especially in academia, like preparing students for the workforce where these tools are going to be prevalent, but also making sure they can think critically about the work they're doing? I don't have a great answer for it, but I know it's going to be important.
So yes, this is maybe kind of a simple analog, but when I was in school, I was not allowed to use a calculator on any of my tests in college because it was believed that then you weren't really learning anything. Never in my professional life, ever, was I told don't use the calculator. It was use the calculator. So to that end, like, is it the same? While we're being, I think intuitively we think we need to understand those fundamental things behind the scenes of how it works. Like, do we?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I remember learning cursive in third grade, and
Yeah.
my third grade teacher was like, "You're going to use cursive forever." I sign stuff, but you can barely read it. Um, I think there's a little bit of a difference. I think even with like, calculator, or I go back to when I started doing programming stuff, I I learned C in school, but like I didn't really, when I got into the profession, have to worry about managing memory as a thing, right? It was all abstracted for me. But I think the difference between that and those systems versus AI is like those things are deterministic, right? It's an algorithm that always produces the same output, whereas AI is not that. So like I think that AI to a point where it's more accurate and able to do more sophisticated things. But I think that like having that understanding of what it's doing will be important much longer than something that abstracts the you know deterministic system that you're working with.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, very interesting. Do you think for this type of change and kind of acceptance of doing new workflows, using new tools and so on, uh, in this space, do you believe it's better driven top down or bottom up?
No, I think bottom up. I think it's important to have a vision as an organization, and to like, AI regardless, like let people know where you're going, because I think that's what helps people buy in,
Mhm.
or decide to make a change, which is fine. Like, but living in uncertainty is, I think, the hardest part. But I think once you've set that direction, I think it's really relying on the people that are peers of each other to share ideas and to share like what is working, what's a thing I did that was like a huge efficiency gain by using AI or some other tool. And then I think equally important is like sharing the failures of a new thing, and like, oh man, here's like I've been banging my head against the wall trying to get this thing to work, and here's this infinite loop I got AI in, and it's ridiculous. Like I think that's also important, but I think people tend to listen to their peers more than management, and so like if you can get people that are excited about it that can champion it a little bit, I think that's how it becomes most effective.
I 100% agree that you learn way more when you fail than
Yeah.
you don't.
Yep.
And to instill a culture that encourages failure
Hmm.
sounds a little bit weird in the corporate environment, but it really is. It's powerful
Yeah.
when it's done right.
Yeah.
What you have a bottom up kind of experimental sharing kind of culture, but you do need some level of guardrail, I assume. Like, what are the guardrails that folks should be thinking about setting for these tools today?
I think a thing that I've personally struggled with a lot of these tools, especially if we're wading into like the agentic AI world, is like allowing these tools to create new data, or change data in places, or put data in places. So I think a great place to get started is using AI and agentic AI to like retrieve information and be able to do interesting things, and like a little bit what we were talking about sharing data, like can you start gleaning insights that you weren't able to glean before by combining data in interesting ways? But I still think like getting started there, you know, those kinds of tasks I think are really great. I think using the tools that are out, like the general tools out there, to get comfortable and familiar and build a little bit of trust, or maybe like understand where the boundaries are for AI, and like, okay, here are great questions for me to go ask this. Here are things I should avoid. Like getting comfortable with those tools, I think, is important.
In the enterprise space, increasingly, some of the tools being deployed start to look like monitoring. It's, hey, here's a coder. I've got a tool that's watching and might detect when they're getting stuck and help them out. And it sounds really good, but also it's helping a manager to know like how much is this employee working or that employee working. Like, how do you feel, or how do you manage expectations in organizations around those kinds of tools?
We've never, as an organization, done any kind of that stuff. I think there's so much more value. Like the metrics, the KPIs are so hard to get right. I think we point often, the thing that always sticks in my head is talking about like airline departure times, and on-time departures really means like when did you leave the gate or back off from the gate, not when you actually flew. So like the airlines are incentivized to get you on the plane, even if they know you're not going anywhere. And I feel similarly about a lot of, especially the developer metrics that are out there about, lines of code written, or commits, or even like points delivered in a sprint, because there's so much other valuable work that goes into building great products that's not that stuff. And if you just incentivize people to do that, like you're leaving a lot of stuff by the wayside.
So how do you evaluate folks? How do you motivate and say, like, this is what a good behavior looks like, or this is where I want you to do more?
Yep. I think, again, getting back to the peer-to-peer relationship, I think assembling teams that create an environment themselves of high trust but high accountability is really important. So I think within project teams, having people that are willing to challenge each other, willing to hold each other accountable, um, is a great place to start. And then I think as a manager, like staying in touch with everybody, understanding where people are at, allowing people to provide feedback and have discussions with other people about, what's going well and what's not. Things like in that kind of environment, when things aren't right, people tend to feel uncomfortable. Like if they're in a position where the culture is not aligned with, I want to coast or something like that, like you start to feel pretty uncomfortable on a team because everybody else has really high expectations and is holding you accountable to things. So I think it's, part of it is assembling people that want to be in that situation. And then I think, helping people when they are struggling to get there and supporting them as much as you can. And then eventually, like, either they get there or like having, to make tough decisions to make sure that you keep the organization in a place where, people enjoy having that environment.
How do you see, maybe you're seeing this already, or maybe it's not going to happen, but I predict that the profile of what you look for in a good employee it's going to change because of all this AI. So like, who are you looking for tomorrow that you weren't looking for yesterday?
Yeah. I think fortunately for us, like being in the consulting world, we've always had an emphasis on people that have those soft skills that are able to present ideas in an articulate way that can help clients through tough decisions, that are great teammates to each other. So I don't think that that stuff changes, but I think, I think a lot of organizations, especially in the tech industry right now, don't interview for those things. They interview for technical skills. And I think a lot of those parts of interview processes are going to be really tough for people to actually validate, if that's your main way of gauging the fit for somebody, you can just have AI solve all these like leak code problems and stuff like that. So I think my advice would be encouraging people to like fold things into the process that help you understand the person as an individual and how they interact with other people and what other people say about them more than the particular skill set or what languages they know or something like that.
I think I agree with that statement more than anything else we've talked about today. I've always believed you hire the person for who they are as a person, because it's really difficult to train values. It's really easy to train skills.
100% agree.
And most skills will eventually be done by AI. So
Yep.
Looking for the most technically talented person may not be as important going forward as the most adaptable person or the most resilient person or data.
We have during our interview process, one of our interviews, we have a place in it where we actually we present our core values one by one, and we ask people to react to them and just say like, what does this mean to you? And I often find that that's like one of the most valuable parts of the interview process, because you get to understand like on quick thinking thing, like how do people think about own it or give a shit, and like does it really resonate, or are they painting themselves as the hero of a situation that was really a team effort? And so I think that like those incorporating those kinds of things into the process is super valuable.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can swear on this podcast.
You can do anything you like, 100%. The AI will just clean it up in the transcript.
Perfect.
Perfect. There you go. Yeah. How come I keep saying duck in this transcript? I don't understand. All right. Sorry.
Nope.
I'll try. No one knows what that reference.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah. Okay. What questions are you getting today that you don't have answers for, or if any?
I think it's, where is this all headed? It's a total, shot in the dark for anybody answering that question. I think you look at on multiple angles, like just the advancement of the technology has been so rapid. But also, the lack of direction from government has been so apparent too. And like, there could be a shift where something, a law is put into place that really puts some guardrails on things, or it could keep being the Wild West. And like, there's just so many directions that this could go that it's what's the end game of this all?
So I'll ask a speculative market question in this space, right? So I don't know if there are any Cory Doctorow fans in the audience. He's a writer that writes a lot about the tech space, and he has this term he calls enshittification, which is that platforms get really, really big, and they have all this promise.
I've read this, yeah.
And then they enshittify everything. So like Facebook went 10 years and it was free and it was fun, and then all of a sudden it's like ads and spam. And, are we in that same kind of land grab now where these AI tools, which are hugely expensive to run, hugely energy consuming, et cetera, they're investing millions of dollars, taking losses to grab a huge audience, to then eventually like you're stuck on the platform and it is no longer any fun.
I wouldn't be surprised by it. I think I've been listening to the Acquired podcast. They just did an episode about Google. And I think very similarly, right? Like spent years and years losing money on trying to figure out how to monetize this thing. And now it's, one of the most profitable businesses in the world. But I don't know how you get there. Like nobody's really solved that problem to get there in a very, as far as I know, like a different way. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they're ultimately following the same playbook. But who knows? Like maybe AI can help us generate other ways of creating business models that are, less ad intrusive and ruining the experience of people that are trying to use it or selling data and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, we shall see.
Yeah.
Before we open to some questions from the audience, we do have a kind of fun thing that we'd like to do on the podcast where we have a bit of a lightning round.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Okay.
No right or wrong answers. They can decide in the audience
okay.
right or wrong answers.
Okay.
So let's start with agent or assistant.
Ooh. Agent.
All right. OpenAI or Anthropic?
I've been on OpenAI so far, but
yeah. Train a model or call an API?
Is MCP an option somewhere in the middle there?
We'll take that as an answer. Top 10 answers on the board. Right? All right. iOS or Android?
I've been stuck in the iOS life cycle. We do all of our development on MacBooks, so I was introduced pretty early. And say what you will, it's pretty amazing just to have my entire life experience like seamless between devices. Love it, but totally understand there are different opinions. Sorry, that was lightning round. Sorry.
That's all right. So I think you answered this one before, but developers with AI, 10 times better or 2 times faster?
Ooh, 2 times faster, not 10 times better.
Yeah,
nowhere near it.
Yep, absolutely. Couple of over-unders here. Over-under, artificial general intelligence, 7 years, over-under.
Oh, I've been hearing about self-driving cars and flying vehicles since I was a little kid, and that hasn't happened. So I feel pretty comfortable with the over on this, but don't quote me.
Okay. Same time frame.
AI, if you're listening, I'm sorry.
7 years, yeah. 7 years, over under break quantum encryption.
Ooh, I think under. I think we're making really good progress there. I think you see a lot of stuff coming out where quantum computing is getting more accurate and more stable, and it's going to be a very interesting problem to solve.
All right. What do you think? Should we quiz him on atomic object itself?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. Atomic object or not atomic object? Meteor.
Oh, this is the quiz. Meteor versus meteorite. I think meteor is non-atomic.
Non-atomic object. How about a neutrino?
Non-atomic.
There's no right or wrong answer here, by the way.
Okay.
The Millennium Falcon.
Yes. Okay.
Let's go with the Millennium Falcon. Atomic object, not atomic.
Atomic object. We're pretty nerdy, so I'll take it from that.
All right. How about James Webb?
Ooh, the telescope. I loved the James Webb telescope. Very atomic.
Very atomic. All right. HAL 9000?
Not atomic at all.
Not atomic. How about 42?
All of our competitors. The answer to everything. Pretty atomic.
All right. We've got the answer to life, the universe, and everything right here. Let's give a quick round of applause, and then we're going to take some questions.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Question for Ryan, and please ask your question. We're going to repeat it to make sure that we capture it on the mic here, and then take it away. Any thoughts from the audience? Scott?
When you talk to clients, are they more, we got to go full steam into AI, or I'm more afraid of it, or are they just kind of in the center?
So the question is, what's the landscape from the client point of view? full bore AI, or let's pump the brakes?
Full bore AI. They're trying to figure out how they can create business value from it. And right now they're just like throwing spaghetti at the wall. They want to try anything to get there because they have this perception of everybody else is moving so quickly, and so they have to too. I think a lot of our conversations are like you see the extreme outliers of this, but a lot of organizations are moving at a much more sustainable pace on this. So don't feel like because you don't have an AI agent, doing all of your people's work that you're far behind.
I'll follow up, then we'll come back here. Do clients though feel like if you're using the AI that they're more successful? Like it's a more successful project because I had AI?
They don't really know if we're using it behind the scenes as much right now.
Okay.
But I think that they want to tout it some way. So if that's the way that they get to tout it, as like it was, system was developed by AI, sure, like go ahead and throw that on there.
Question back here somewhere? Yes.
Besides co-pilot software development, are you using AI other places?
Sorry.
How are you using AI outside of Copilot?
Yeah. So I think maybe similar, but other practice design. We're using it pretty heavily in order to do prototyping, and also like it's with Figma, it's starting to blend this boundary between what is design artifact and what is front end code. Like with specifically with MCPs from Figma, you can do some pretty interesting things. So we're starting to see like these roles blend together a little bit, where a designer on a project can do some front end stuff because the tool helps them do that. Outside of that, within our delivery practice, which is people that are doing product consulting and project management for our teams, leveraging those tools heavily for tracking meeting notes and to-dos and action items and follow-ups there. Myself, I mentioned it a little bit before, but a lot of the research piece, I spend a lot of time talking to other organizations. And so using things like deep research to understand the problem landscape for them. But we're not doing anything internally that is like, we don't have an accounting department anymore because we're using some sort of AI system. So does that answer your question? Yeah.
Super. Yes, over here.
That's what AI can do, and then they have something in their head. Like I feel like there's a lot of people who don't understand what LLMs are and what multimodals are, but they have something in their mind that they're like, that's just
How do you handle clients that are still themselves learning what this AI stuff's all about?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of education around that, and I think in those conversations, I think what we're trying to do is get a gauge for where are they and what is their understanding. And the reason that they're coming to us to have a conversation is because we are experts in the industry. And so if we can help them better understand what these tools are or are not, I think that helps us add value in the conversations we're having with them. And it's not necessarily that it leads to, like more work for us or anything like that. But I think just being open to having those conversations and like providing your expertise in that room, I think people take that, like it's very valuable for them to clear that picture up.
About a year ago, I saw an industry analysis. I apologize, I don't remember what the source was, but they were estimating even at that point that AI was making people about 9 times more productive. So probably it's gone up since then. But are you finding clients that are saying, therefore, I should pay 9 times less?
Yeah, budgets don't really change, but I think what's going to happen is people are going to expect more for those budgets. So I don't think we're going to create a new service offering where now we're developing new products for clients at half the cost. It's going to be an expectation that we can get more done for what they want to do. And I think that's part of the reason that our teams have really been encouraged to experiment with these things, because we do feel like in the future that will be table stakes as part of the efficiency gain. I don't know where the number's at yet. Like it really depends on like what you're trying to do of like how much of a gain there is. And I think right now those gains are mainly like micro gains, like having AI assistants or AI coding tools that can autocomplete things or write automated tests for you that, every day they're saving you 15 minutes to 30 minutes. It's not that I prompted AI to do this thing and it did all the whole feature for me in 10 minutes instead of 4 hours. But those micro gains add up over the course of a 6-month project.
Yes, ma'am. Talk a little bit about your portfolio.
Yeah, good question. We have a pretty diverse range of organizations. We work with both private and public entities. I would say the majority of our portfolio leans private, but we've always been an organization that has felt like we want to be, because we're a consultancy, we can be insulated from any particular industry downshift. So we always keep a close eye on what is our portfolio mix across private, public, and industries to make sure that we're not ever putting too many eggs in one basket. So yeah, it's a pretty broad range.
Come here and then back over to you.
So you see a lot of your clients or you guys worried about this privacy, what kind of data you use to train some of these LLMs, and for someone who is not something like this, right? So how do you see your clients worried about it, or how do you do something?
Yeah, Howard. So the question is kind of broadly, how are you managing security and privacy, and in particular, not accidentally revealing your customer's IP as you're feeding their data into these LLMs?
Yeah, it's a good question. Making sure that the tools we're using are all configured so that we're not training general models on them, so our clients' data is not being passed to them. But I think it's a good question because I think we see new examples all the time of more advanced prompt injection attacks. And if AI is in its infancy, AI security is like even further behind that, right? And so I think we can have our due diligence, but I think at the same time, there's not like a ton of fantastic best practices out there for it yet. So I think part of it is understanding that everybody's in that same boat as well. And so, it might be the case that it's a little riskier than another solution, but it's also worth it to go that route.
I'll before we come to the question over here, I'll just add a little bit. I believe that security always lags in every industry because security tends to be an additional cost. And until an industry gets large enough to bear that cost, it doesn't apply it, right? So we didn't have seatbelts in cars until there were enough cars, enough accidents to warrant and that cost, right? There's all kinds of examples throughout history where security lags. And I think right now, one of the differentiators you see some companies doing is leaning into that security up front before the industry has even caught up, just as a way to differentiate among all the noise that's out there right now.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that, it's not just the data privacy, but it's these people that are using Cursor or other tools to create applications and not understanding even like the old school basic security best practices and leaking private API keys because they just have no context for that. And I saw a meme on Twitter or X or whatever you call it, like somebody boasting about creating a product using Cursor and I don't need developers anymore, and then being DDoSed because they leaked a bunch of private key information. And it's like, yeah, security should be at the forefront of a lot of this, and it is lagging behind.
The question here, and then we'll come over to you.
It's semi-related. So as organizations are adopting AI more and more, every company now have a chance to use that spreadsheet or something. So what's your point of view on, as organizations more and more use it, the adoption of transparency and personalization? Because you mentioned research, right? I do a lot of competitive research, market research, but one time I saw that, oh, it's too good to be true, saying. So when I asked it to list exact sources it used, it's obvious. There's absolutely nothing that's there whenever. So how do you see kind of adapting policies and kind of best practices about your organization?
It's a great question. So the question is around, the management of both trust and accuracy and authenticity, and the fact that some of these tools are trained on bad data, and how do you navigate all of that?
Yeah, I think that gets back to this education piece and the critical thinking piece of all this. For our clients, we ensure that they know that every line of code that's a part of their application is something that a human understands and knows what it's doing. And I think that's an important piece where if you're not employing that critical thinking, or you're just using AI to build a solution for you and you don't understand it, you could run into a lot of trouble. So I think, just being upfront, I think both internally and externally about that policy, like putting that out there, I think, set some expectations internally about how we should and shouldn't be using these tools.
On the previous topic, one back. So you're using Cursor with OpenAI. How is your contract with those companies? Do they have access to the data that's used?
I don't know for certain, but I believe that like within the Cursor environment, you can enable or disable whether or not the data that you're inputting into your Cursor instance will be used for general model training.
Most of the tools, in fact, all of them that I have looked at have what appear to be pretty accurate terms in terms of your data will not be used to train the greater models. The fear that I have is that I think there's a pretty easy end around. For example, there's a lot of all of the electronics that we have in our home have license agreements saying they're not going to share our private data, but then they themselves as devices have like IP addresses, right? And so when my phone's IP address talks to my smart TV's IP address, they know each other and they know like where my phone has been, and suddenly I get ads that feel like they're targeted ads. Well, they never shared they didn't share my name, my social security number. Like the lawyers would say my personal information wasn't shared, but the IP address of the phone I carry around with me is not considered a piece of my personal information. I think there's going to be these same kind of problems where we are using data and it's being constrained in an environment that somehow there'll be like an abstraction layer to say, well, no, it was anonymized properly and it might still get used to train.
Yep.
I don't know that, but I would predict that. So it's the Wild West still, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Let's take one more question and then we're gonna stick around for some networking. Any final thoughts for Ryan? Yes, right here. Yes.
Sort of organizations petrified about what AI is. We have no systems in place to reassure or even communicate what AI is. So I think that it's also a piece of how you help your organization embrace what idea of AI, even during IT. Us out there always feel like IT, you all have all the answers, so you're not scared about what this monster is that's coming, right? So how do you help your folks transition into embrace it, or be open to what this AI thing is?
Thank you for the question. It's a really good question, particularly as AI is going to affect every industry. So for folks that are not from the technology space, like how should they be reassured? Should they be scared? Like, how do you address that?
It's going to have an impact everywhere. It's not entirely different from some projects we work on where we're building a new piece of software that replaces an old piece of software that somebody has been doing their job for 5 or 10 years, and now that workflow has changed. It's really scary. I think the things that organizations can do to help their employees navigate that change is, one, like give them time to adapt. It can't be tomorrow we're going to use this tool. It's how do you gradually step into getting comfortable with a new process that involves this, where part of your daily work is maybe using this new tool, but it's not completely replacing what you're doing before. So you can start to get comfortable with those tools. I think, as an organization, investing money and allowing people to go do training, do things like this, where you can learn about potentially some of the benefits of these tools, or maybe even like the, impendingness of this, so that you can understand that this is a very significant change and that, it's going to impact things. And so that personal motivation can be there to start to learn a little bit. And then I think supporting people along that journey. So not everybody is going to be able to make that transition overnight. And so providing resources and support and coaching for the people that are impacted by this, I think is like what I would see as like a really successful roadmap for starting to adopt these things, especially, like you mentioned in tech, like we move so fast, and like it's taken us a while to adopt some of these tools in our practice, but we're used to that kind of change. And so we do it often. And I think having planning and being intentional around it. I think also what I mentioned before, like not feeling like you're behind everybody else because you read the news or see LinkedIn posts about how all these things are changing. I think the general sentiment around this is like it's moving fast, but it's not breakneck speed. So there's still time to invest in people that can get to that point.
Oh, yeah, I know we said that would be the last question, but I'm going to take moderator privilege and ask a follow-up because I think you asked a really important question. We talked before about how we're vibe coding, right? We're writing code even though we don't have that skill. The power of the technology is such that anyone from any background, in theory, the tech folks would say anyone can use this. And are we heading to a future where the folks that just don't want to, unfortunately, have no choice? Like, you're going to have a smartphone. You're going to have to use the internet. Like, is that the path that we're on?
I think so.
Yeah.
I just think it is.
Yeah. And so the best thing is to, just learn and understand, and change can be hard, but sometimes change is inevitable. And hopefully through these kind of conversations, we can make it a little bit more accessible.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for joining the program. For those that are here in the audience, I think you can stick around for a little bit and answer more questions. Thank you all for attending, for your questions. And this post of the RIoT Underground will be online probably by next week sometime if you want to give another listen or you want to pass it on to a friend. But thanks for everything. I see Jen walking up. Do you have an announcement to make? Or you're just shutting off the computer? All right. Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.